Okay, I'm going to open the September 13th, 2021 Hood River City Council meeting. It is 6:06. Now I'll call the meeting to order. Remind people, this is the first time I've done this since COVID started. Make sure your cell phones are silenced. And I'm going to read a land acknowledgement first, and then we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. As we meet tonight, let us all remember that today we are stewards of land that has been home to Indigenous peoples for thousands of years before the recent arrival of the European heritage dominant culture. We honor this land's ancestors as we go about our business today. All right, you're going to join me with the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. All right, our first order of business is business from the audience, and I have a couple people signed up. Our first person that signed up is Doug Archibald. And our new podium is right over here.
It's off and then when it's green.
Oh, good. Okay. Hello, Council. Thank you.
Doug, can you wait just a moment? Is there any way we can turn that just a little bit so that the audience can see Doug? I think we're just kind of out of alignment, just a smidgen. Okay, hold on. Okay, great. There you go.
Okay, I'm telecasting now.
All right.
Thank you very much. I'm Douglas Archibald. I'm a local resident and a realtor, and I've been concerned about affordable housing issues for a long time, and haven't done anything particularly myself to help forward the cause, but I've gotten very interested as Council got involved with the missing middle zoning ordinance. I had thoughts on that. Out of thoughts on that and conversation with Eric Haney I became aware of the Big River Community Land Trust, which is doing exactly the thing that I've wanted to see in affordable housing, a niche that I feel is missing, which is affordable ownership opportunities that will exist in perpetuity for families that are earning between 80 and 100% of the median family income. And so I've gotten involved as a volunteer with Big River Community Land Trust, and I'm just kind of learning the whole process. But I'm coming here to speak to you tonight, hoping that I can encourage you when you are in the RFQ, the Rand Road RFQ process of the meeting tonight, to consider adding the related application, which was the highest rated second tier application, into the 3 accepted RFQs. Just to touch back on a couple of things that I noticed when reading the packet for tonight. One was the city's 2021 work plan stating the goal of developing affordable housing production strategy for area median family income MFIs up to 120%. And then touching back on the process for the RFQs for Rand Road, which was to accept 2 to 3 applicants to move on to the RFP phase. What seems to me to be missing from the 2 applicants, 2 clearly qualified applicants who were accepted, is a focus on that 80 to 120% range of income, and a local touch, and maybe the desire to really give priority to some of those ownership opportunities where some of those organizations seem like they focused more on rental opportunities. And granted, we absolutely need those too, but that is a product that exists currently in Hood River, not as much as is needed, but it's a product that exists. Whereas affordable submarket ownership opportunities, it doesn't exist. And we need to make that happen. So what I'm looking at is I understand the council's desire to not get involved in a long discussion about which of those 3 tier 2 groups should or should not advance My fear is that if that conversation happens at a later time, those groups are going to be further behind in having an ability to put forward an intelligent RFP, and that the sensible thing to do that seems like a no harm option would be to elevate the top ranking tier 2 applicant into the next phase and let them present an RFP. So that's what I'm asking for tonight, and I appreciate your time.
Thanks, sir. And our next business from the audience is John Nigbor.
Yes, thank you.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. And I'm glad that Doug went first because I've never been here, so I kind of know how to start. Thank you all for your time. And I loved your opening statement about the Indians. And I'm guessing everyone in the room is a fan of protecting our environment. So we have an obligation to ourselves, each other, and kids to do everything we can to take care of Mother Earth. And each of us can make a difference by simply taking care of our little slice of this planet. However, there's a very destructive monster spreading from Portland and moving east into Hood River, and it's called English ivy. And in 2010, the Oregon Department of Agriculture has banned the transport, sale, or propagation of English ivy in, of course, Oregon. English ivy is an invasive weed in the Pacific Northwest, and according to the Statesman Journal, English ivy has become a major invasive plant in the Pacific Northwest. Once established, English ivy suppresses and destroys everything in its path. According to Ecosystem Gardening, English ivy is the most hated plant. Unfortunately, residents who have moved here from other parts of the country aren't aware of its destructive nature. They nurture and propagate it on a regular basis. So in turn, it spreads and invades other public and private land in Hood River. I simply propose that we enforce the Oregon Department of Agriculture's law, eliminate it from Hood River, and keep it from moving any further east. So I propose that we provide residents of Hood River who have it growing in their property a notice of, let's say, a year to remove it, or they'll be subject to removal fees incurred by the city. So that's what I wanted to present. I hope I did it in a clear and concise manner, and I appreciate your time. What's the next step? Can I ask that in my time that's allotted, or?
Yeah, you can ask.
Okay, thanks.
The next step would be to, we would, take it in, and then one of us might bring it up at council call at some point, or we would talk to our city manager or our public works about how that works or what our laws are. And then we would kind of do some research on that first and see if it was something that, we could let rise up as high as it needed to. And if we had to enforce it, what would that cost? What would it take? So there's quite a bit of a process,
Sure.
Whether we would take that on or not, but we would definitely, we hear you. We definitely hear you.
Well, and as a closing remark, I'm happy to help with any of those steps. I'm happy to volunteer. So, please consider that as well.
Okay.
Thank you again.
Right. Jen, do you know if Heather was going to come on now, or was she going to?
She does. We just changed the camera.
Okay. Okay, Heather?
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, Heather. Go ahead.
Are you able to see me too, or just hear me?
Just hear you.
Oh, okay. So earlier today, I emailed you a map from your housing needs analysis, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but you have it in your email if you haven't had a chance to look at that. So I'm Heather Staten, and I'm the policy director for Thrive Hood River. And as some of you know, Thrive has advocated for the purchase of the West Side properties for a community park for about 5 years. We worked with PSU and the Parks District in 2016 on initial concept plans, and some of you might have participated in those workshops. The thing that first sold us on the property, oh yay, they're passing those around, great, was your housing needs analysis, specifically the drawing that I emailed you. According to the housing needs analysis, Hood River will grow by 4,500 people in the next 20 years. Where will they live? Mostly in the red and blue areas, the empty land that's available for development. If you look at the map, this parcel couldn't be more well located to serve these emerging neighborhoods. The thing that sealed the deal was spending time on the property itself, bringing community members there and watching their responses. It's a magnificent piece of land. It's big enough to have many of the elements that people say they want from a park: meandering walking trails, sports fields, picnic shelters and playgrounds, community gardens and dog parks. At 20 acres, it could do, if not at all, a lot. Another way to look at this is to consider what happens if the city doesn't allow these SDCs to be used to purchase the property. First of all, it might mean that the Parks District can't purchase it at all, since the 1.5 million they're requesting in SDC funds is about 3/4 of the purchase price. So what are the impacts of not acquiring these properties? Well, the need for more parks in the west side of Hood River doesn't go away. If the council determines that land right next to the UGB isn't good enough and that future parks need to actually be in the urban growth area or city limits, it means that whoever develops those future parks will need to come up with a lot more money for a lot less land, since land in the city is twice as expensive as the west side property. Not only that, but by using land in the city for a future park, you'll be giving up precious land that could be used for building housing. If the city doesn't help make this park a reality, is there something that the residents of Hood River could get instead that's a better deal, better located, or is a property with more possibility for developing the kinds of features the community needs? I know the available land in the city pretty well, and I'm struggling to think of anything that checks the boxes that this property checks. The Parks District has offered to replenish the UGB SDC funds with grant money or alternative revenue. I don't see this as necessary, as this park will function as a city park serving city residents, exactly what you expect Parks SDCs collected in this city to be used for. We encourage you to authorize the use of the city's SDCs for this purchase and bring this park to the community. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. All right. We have one presentation this evening. So, Will?
Thank you, Mayor. Kitty, feel free to take over.
We'll see.
Kenny is the Executive Director of the Columbia Community Action Council. He has a presentation for us. Give some organizational updates.
Share it on there.
Yeah. Yes. Which one would be screen one, I think.
There we go. Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. My name is Kenny LaPointe. I'm the Executive Director of Mid-Columbia Community Action Council. Thank you for having me here tonight. I just wanted to give you a little bit, I've come to you a couple times, I think, and just talk to you about some of the work we've been doing. I wanted to highlight some of the things we have going on right now, and then just generally give you an overview of the work that our agency does. We've come a long way in the last 10 months or so. Many of you know I started community action in November of last year, so I'm still new. I think I get to own that for a little while. So I'll just call attention here that we have a new logo as the agency. This was a logo that was selected on by our staff and our board. So we voted on this logo. It really emphasizes the values of the agency. So you actually see the value set of the agency overarching the little house there. Each of the images relates to our different program areas, and the roof you see represents equity, which overarches all of our programs. So here's just an overview of our board of directors. You'll notice Arthur Babbitts, Marianne Durkin, and Sarah Kellums from Hood River County. So we are the community action agency. There is one in every region of the state, and they're also across the entire nation. We are the one that serves Sherman, Wasco, and Hood River counties. We've been around for quite some time. We've done a lot of different things throughout history. Right now, our focus areas are providing utility bill pay assistance. We provide weatherization, which is associated with utility bill pay. I'll talk more about these in a minute. We provide housing assistance, so whether it's homeless prevention or rapid rehousing, which is helping folks get out of homelessness quickly and into permanent housing. And then we are also in the shelter business. Primary funding comes from the state and federal government, and most of it is passed through the State Housing Finance Agency, Oregon Housing and Community Services. So we have a new mission for our agency. Our previous mission was utilize the National Community Action Agency mission and the logo. So we've kind of created our own personal touch to our agency, but our mission is to build a better future for our community through partnership and equity-centered programs that prevent and eliminate poverty and houselessness. And I'm not going to go through and read every one to you, but you have this information in your packet. I mentioned the value set. So again, all of our strategic plan, which includes our mission, vision, values, was agreed upon by our board and our staff through multiple planning sessions. So housing, again, is a focus area for our agency. We provide street outreach services. So recently we received a very large grant from Oregon Housing and Community Services. I think I had mentioned this before at a presentation. We had applied for $1.8 million in funding to do homeless services throughout the region. We were the top scoring application in the state and were asked how much money we want. And we ended up getting $3.1 million to provide those services between March of this year and September of next year. Some of the things that is funding is a large street outreach team that is focused on serving culturally specific communities, communities of color, Native populations throughout the region. Our partners in that application included the Housing Authority, Hood River Shelter Services, the Next Door, the Oregon Human Development Corporation, Nichiwana Housing. Those were all included in the application. We also were able to get the funding included in there to fund Hood River Shelter Services shelter operations for this entire winter, which also included allowing them to go to a 24/7 model rather than just the overnight model. So I mentioned our street outreach. So we do have a team of 2 street outreach folks at our agency, but we have a team of 11 total across all the agencies that I mentioned who are working together to do outreach in our communities. And they're able to mobilize resources like place people in shelters, or we also place folks in hotels and motels if it's families with children or folks with medical conditions where we want to make sure that they have an indoor place where they have a shower, bathroom, able to stay clean. So in your packets, you'll notice I provided service numbers for Hood River County. These are Hood River County numbers. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I just wanted to give you a breakdown of services that are provided by county. I provide this information to my board every month because it assists in decision-making and making sure we're providing services equitably across the 3 county service territory. I mentioned that we're in the shelter business now. So in February of this year, we took over the Dallas shelter site. It was previously just 6 pallet shelter units, same sort of model that is operated by Hood River Shelter Services. We now have 18 of those units serving up to 36 individuals. We provide on-site services there. We coordinate with the Center for Living to provide services on-site for our shelter guests. And then we also put everyone who is there on a case management plan to help them get into permanent housing. It is really a requirement for the ongoing stay in the shelter that you are working to obtain permanent housing in the long run. And we've been rather successful at doing so. In fact, just about 2-3 weeks ago, we were able to place 4 of our shelter guests into permanent housing, which was why we're doing what we're doing. We want to see those successes. Most recently, an exciting piece of news is last week, we purchased a shower trailer, and that shower trailer is now operating at our shelter site. It took a bit longer to have it built due to supply chain issues, as you can imagine, but that is now operating at the shelter site. It provides showers, restrooms, place to clean up. There's an ADA unit in there, so we have 3 of those shower units available. We are also partnering with Hood River Shelter Services to purchase an additional unit that will go to the Hood River Shelter site and will include laundry, restroom, and showers. So all three of those things. So household utilities is a little bit a different name. It used to be called energy assistance programs because we were really focused on energy utilities, but now we are really doing work across multiple utility areas. We're partnering with the city to do water programs, City of Hood River to do water programs. We also do garbage and recycling, natural gas. We even have a firewood program. So in the wintertime, we will post up and folks can come by and pick up firewood in Wasco County. And again, here's the service numbers. The household utility program definitely serves the most people at our agency on an annual basis. I also note that I included information on clients served this year so far, because we are looking to pretty significantly exceed our prior year's service numbers. The additional funding helps with that. Home weatherization is a program that operates in concert with our energy assistance program. So when we notice households have higher than normal utility amounts, that flags it for us. We know there's potentially an opportunity to do some energy efficiency upgrades in the home. So our staff will do an energy audit and we'll determine what upgrades we can do to improve that household energy efficiency. And we will go into the home working with contractors to install new windows, new doors, air seal the home, new insulation, new ductless heat pump systems. So we really want to improve the overall household energy efficiency, which will, at the end of the day, reduce those utility bills that we're helping to pay. And the weatherization program has been a very underutilized program historically. In fact, just about a year and a half ago, the agency was potentially going to shut the program down. We served 5 households in Hood River County last year. We now have 61 households that are on the waiting list for that program, and we're looking to increase those resources pretty significantly. Overall, last year, we only served 13 households. So far this year, we've served 21. So we've drastically improved how many households we're serving. This is a success that I just really wanted to highlight, and I want to thank the city for its partnership on rapidly getting cooling centers set up during these heat waves we had this year. I think it was really unexpected to have 115. We were at 120 degrees in the Dalles. Weather in June. I'm used to no hot weather till after July 4th. So that was just very abnormal. The city really jumped in and said, we'll help you find a location, which was the fire hall where we first had it. I know some council members also volunteered at that site to ensure that folks were staying cool. We also had Fish Food Bank who helped to step up and provide food for folks who were at the cooling center. But it was really, I think it highlighted a partnership between the city and Community Action and Hood River Shelter Services to ensure that people were safe and taken care of during weather that could have been very deadly. And I will say that some of the other cities throughout the state were not so fortunate and did not mobilize really quickly. And they did have people who passed away due to the heat. So we're very fortunate for the partnership. The people who were able to stay cool are very thankful for that. We also were able to set up another cooling center in August, and we did that at the Hood River Alliance Church. Another, opportunity and example of us getting together really quickly to get that cooling center set up. We are seeking funding right now through the Oregon Community Foundation to fund cooling center operations next year, anticipating that this is going to be a regular operation that we're going to have to mobilize on an annual basis. And I will update you if we are successful in getting that money. We've also partnered with the city to provide a water discount program. So our staff have been working with city staff to do that. The program provides a 40% discount on water and 30% discount on sewer for income eligible households, renter households. So for renters with water and sewer included in their rent, so their rent incorporates all their utility costs, the discount could be applied to their Pacific Power bill. So if they're paying for power, we would be able to apply that discount through their power bill. And that is a partnership between Community Action, the City of Hood River, as well as Pacific Power. So far, we've been able to serve 59 households with that program since June. And thanks to Will, we've been able to do some good outreach on that program and have done some media related to it. So here's just a list of our partners. I won't read those off to you. I mentioned some of the recent successes, the Emergency Solutions Grant funding that we received. We've also paid over $2.5 million to local landlords to help keep folks from losing their homes due to COVID-19. That's been a partnership with the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority. Currently, the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority is running the Oregon Emergency Rent Assistance Program, which can be applied for online, and they have about $2.7 million to get out with that program right now. We also are fortunate to have received $1.5 million in funding to build a navigation center in the Dalles. And you're probably saying, what's a navigation center? A navigation center is really defined in statute. And it is a shelter that is co-located with services. So what we are looking to do is acquire a site, probably build this navigation center. We will put our Dalles shelter there, and then we will also have multiple agencies that are co-located underneath one roof. So the Housing Authority, the Next Door, Nichiwana Housing, the Oregon Human Development Corporation, we will all be working under one roof to provide holistic services to clients in one location, hopefully making it easier for clients to access services. Another thing that's exciting that we have going on is we are currently in the process of working to build approximately 60 new units of affordable housing in the Dalles. We have a site that we own called the Hamilton Apartments, which is 10 units of affordable housing serving formerly homeless veterans. The site is very underdeveloped. We're looking to put 60 units on that site potentially, still serving formerly homeless veterans, actually increasing the number of units for formerly homeless veterans by triple. We will also have rent assistance in the units. So we have project-based vouchers from the Housing Authority that we've received. And we will also be putting on-site services there. We have a supportive services for veteran families program. Our staff will be located at this site. We're also partnering with the Mid-Columbia Center for Living to provide behavioral health services to the guests, to the residents of that apartment complex. Here's a definition of permanent supportive housing there. We are planning to apply for state funds at the beginning, it says 21, actually at the beginning of next year, and are working on our architectural renderings for that project right now. I talked about the navigation center. And then lastly, I just want to hit on our new strategic plan. So on September 1st, it was really a turning point for our agency. We released a new website, we launched a new logo, and we released a new strategic plan, really highlighting that our agency is headed in a new direction. We're doing business in a different way. We have focus areas around equity and racial justice, community relationships. And one of those relationships is with you all, making sure that we're communicating and continuing to build the relationship and partnership between the city and Mid-Columbia Community Action. We also have focus area around housing stability and homeless services. So this is really getting into the root of our programs. And then organizational health and infrastructure. So our organization has long needed some updates, and we've undergone those. I mentioned a new website. I encourage you to go take a look at that website. There's actually a link to our full strategic plan on here, but our new website allows folks to apply for programs through our website. It allows folks to schedule appointments in our office through the website and provides much better information on all the programs that we have available. I do encourage you to take a look at our strategic plan when you get a chance. I think it's pretty simple to read. I didn't want something that was 400 pages long and was good to go to sleep to, but something that you really could soak in and understand, and it meant something to the community. So that's it for me, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have them, if they're easy.
Thank you, Kenny. That was a great update. Really appreciate you taking the time to inform us on so many things you guys are doing. It's really wonderful. Does anyone have questions for Gladys, you have a question?
Yeah, Kenny, thank you so much for your leadership. I've been living in the Gorge and working with Mid-Columbia Action for a long time, and I commend you for all the services that you've been able to offer, especially during a time when we're in a pandemic. So I really appreciate that. I have two questions for you. What are you doing to diversify your board is one, and I heard you talking about a lot of social service agencies that are going to be offered at the Navigation Center, but I didn't hear any connection to healthcare.
So diversification of the board, that's a very interesting topic. So our board, the makeup of our board is determined in our bylaws, obviously. It is, as we're taking on diversity, equity, and inclusion at our agency, and equity and racial justice is a priority. If you actually take a look at our strategic plan, one of the plan imperatives is to diversify the board. So as we have board members turn over in the coming few years, we will be replacing them to make sure that we're more wholly representing the communities that we serve. So that is a huge focus area for us. We're not doing well there right now, which is why it is a focus area for us. We're also going to be going through DEI training. So we've contracted with the next door to provide our staff and our board with training to really set the base level and educate our staff and board on what it means to provide programs in an equitable way, to create diversity among board and staff, and to do better outreach to communities of color that reside throughout the region. So the other question related to physical health services. So we are working with One Community Health to bring the mobile medical clinic to our site. So we've been in discussions with leadership at One Community Health to do that. So we plan at the Navigation Center at a minimum to set up hookups for that mobile medical unit so it can be brought to the site on a regular basis and plugged in and played. If One Community Health would like clinic space, I'm happy to build it for them.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for the question.
Yeah, wow, that's a lot of work in the last 10 months. So thank you. It's super impressive to see. And I've been thrilled with the partnership you've been building with the city and the work that's been done. I'm wondering, since you're here, is there anything you need in particular from the council to move things forward? Or is the relationship with staff where you want it to be and what you need?
Oh, the relationship with staff is phenomenal. So, I mean, we really appreciate the partnership, you know, underutilized partnership probably historically. So I'm really happy to have the partnership with the city. I would say that in the future, this Navigation Center concept, this one-stop shop integrated service site model is something that we want to bring to Hood River. So you'll notice in our strategic plans that one of the areas that we want to focus on under organizational infrastructure and health is creating a better service center in Hood River. So we have a tiny office in the Columbia River Insurance Building down the street. It is very small, and we need to have more representation in the city of Hood River. And I've already hit up some elected officials for money. I'm not shy about asking for money. Maybe that's good or bad, but I have been asking folks to consider us as they make some federal funding allocations and state funding allocations in the future, so we could potentially build out a navigation center in Hood River. And we've been talking with Hood River Shelter Services about that as well.
Thank you.
So if you want to pitch that to Merkley's office, Wyden's office, anyone in Salem, please.
Do you have a letter of support?
Do I have? I have not gotten any letters of support for that yet. Okay. So I think for me right now, if I can do this right in the Dalles, it will be a shoe-in to get more money to do it again here. So I want to make sure that we're really successful with the one project we have in front of us so we can duplicate it. And we're not working slowly. So we're trying to get stuff done quick. And people need it, right? Like people are struggling. It's a tough time. Homelessness is pretty tough right now, and we want to make sure that we're responding rapidly to the urgent needs in the community.
He answered all the questions I had, so thank you for coming and great work.
Thanks.
Good job, Penny. I hope it's all sustainable. That's
That's the goal.
Wow, what a great presentation. I'm just so impressed with all the stuff you guys are doing. But thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I just second all that. It's such a wonderful presentation, and thank you for what you're doing for the community. I did have one fact question. You mentioned somewhere in your presentation you're working to fundraise for some programming for next year for a cooling center. I was just curious what your organizational costs are for the cooling centers and where you're looking for that money.
So right now we're looking at the Oregon Community Foundation. You know, the volunteer part, especially in Hood River, was so quick. And we utilized the list of folks who had volunteered at the vaccine clinics. And we put that opportunity up, and I think we had the volunteer list filled out within hours. So folks were ready to go on that. We're requesting $24,000 from Oregon Community Foundation for that, for the operations. It's really for us to staff it and do the prep work, because it becomes a drop everything right now, because it's not like I know 20 days in advance that it's going to be 115 degrees. I know 5 days in advance, maybe 10 days in advance at best. So we have to really drop everything and mobilize and spend a lot of time over the week before to make sure we have everything in place. And then we're communicating with all of our partners that, hey, don't worry, we got it, we're on it. And then, you know, putting out press releases and communicating with the media and making sure we're getting the information out. I do think that if we're successful with this grant application, we'll be pretty solid for next year.
Will, thank you for the help helping these days out, find things like the water. Thanks. Yeah, I'd just like to echo all of Kenny's comments about how we're working together. Really appreciate their partnership, and they're doing great things. And I really echo how well it's partnering. We're partnering together with the Community Action Council.
Right? You know, everything that everyone has been saying, it's like, it's just night and day what you have brought to the organization and shepherded forward to be able to acquire all these funds and motivate everyone and organize staff and board, and kudos to you. Thank you.
Thanks. It's been a process. I will leave by saying, because I know this has been top of mind in the past, that we are working right now. We got a grant from Providence to do regional homeless service coordination. And the Hood River Homeless Stakeholders Coalition did a lot of work on the strategic plan around homelessness in Hood River specifically. We're looking to create a bigger region-wide plan, because services don't live in just one city. They live throughout the entire region. And when I say region, I'm talking Hood River, Wasco, Sherman, Klickitat, Skamania counties as well. So we have an RFP out for a consultant right now. I sent an email out to the Stakeholders Coalition the other day. And I also wanted to highlight that there's so many things in that strategic plan that have been accomplished. So I think it's really important for us to take a step back and acknowledge that we've had some success. So we're not omitting the plan or anything like that. We're going to incorporate it into the overall work that we're doing, but we are looking to create a more regional system. So with that, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you so
for
much.
being here.
Appreciate it. All right, that was our only presentation. We don't have anything. I'll open the work session, but do we have anything on the work session?
No, we do not.
We don't. Okay. All right. So we have nothing on our work session. So we will adjourn that. We do have regular council meetings, so we'll go ahead and open that. Do we have any additions or corrections?
No additions.
Our first item on our regular council meeting this evening is the consent agenda. Does anyone have anything on that they need to have pulled off? Got a lot of things on. No one has anything to pull off of that?
No.
Any questions at all, or can we just go with that? Okay, do I have a motion for the consent agenda then?
I'll move that we approve the consent agenda.
Megan's made a motion to approve the consent agenda and Tim has seconded that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstaining? Chair votes aye. Unanimously approved. Okay, regular business items. Authorization, our first item is the authorize the use of parks SDCs outside of the urban growth boundary.
Yes, Mayor, and do we have representation from the Parks District here? Please, come up. So this is, item from the Parks District to request permission to use city-generated assistance development charges for the purchase of property just on the boundaries of road boundaries. And through our collection agreement with the district, that requires, approval. So that's everything.
Hi, so I think that we sent you a presentation, should I?
Is it on? Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Marcy Wiley, Assistant Director for Hood River Valley Parks and Recreation District. This is Anna Cavalieri, our Board President for the Parks District. And Mark Hickok, our District Director, is unable to join us tonight. And the reason being is because he loves Parks and Rec so much that he has agreed to be the head coach for his little girls soccer team. And he has a coaches meeting tonight for community education and soccer. So he apologizes for not being able to be here, but how very appropriate for Parks and Rec. Hood River Valley Parks and Recreation District collects system and development charges, as you all know, to help keep up with the growth in the community. We keep track of that money that is collected inside and outside the urban growth boundary. As part of our collection agreement between the Parks District and the city, we must obtain your authorization to spend Parks District SDCs if that money is to be spent outside of the urban growth boundary. We are here tonight to ask for your authorization to spend $1,530,000 of current and future Parks District SDCs that are collected inside the urban growth boundary to acquire the Fairview property listed on the screen. I'm going to pass it over to Anna Cavalieri so that she can make a few comments first.
I just wanted to tell you all, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity to come and talk to you. And I wanted to say we really appreciate Heather's comments and support and Thrive's work in supporting this project for so long. It's been a long project in the works. Our friends and neighbors and visitors, they don't care whose logo it is on the signs at the entry to any park. And many of the amenities in our community are owned and managed by different entities, as you guys know, like the library owns Georgina Park, you guys own Children's Park, and our district manages the skate park. These amenities are available for everyone to use, oftentimes because the different entities work together to make them happen. A good example of this is, of course, Children's Park, which existed because Mark and Tim helped build it so long ago, and then Megan did a fantastic job of leading the rebuild efforts just a couple of years ago. And all of our district's board members and our families participated in that project, and we voted unanimously to support by, I think we paid $400,000, maybe it was $450,000 of Parks SDC funds were contributed towards the achievement of that project, which again, you did a great job rebuilding and putting together. Waterfront Park is, of course, another example of the city working together with the Port and the Parks District to provide an amenity that everyone is able to enjoy. So on behalf of the Parks District Board, I'm really excited that we've gotten one step closer to using Park District funds to acquire just the perfect location that can serve as an accessible and welcoming community park for everyone who lives in and around Hood River and is visiting Hood River. Another reason we're especially thrilled about this particular project is its location. It's amazing, incredible location. And Marcy, do you want to elaborate on why this opportunity is particularly unique and how it significantly benefit everybody, but especially our city residents?
Sure. So our job is to make sure that we're following the plans that we have in place. And right now, we know that the city of Hood River already went through a study of the west side in the west side area concept plan and identified target areas for parks that are needed. And from your plan, it says the precise locations of parks have yet to be determined, but the concept is that one neighborhood park should be located within each of the 3 residential neighborhoods with the possibility of a community park of 20 to 30 acres that may or may not replace a neighborhood park within the west side area. So already in some of your documentation that you have that guides you. Now, as a community, and as multiple agencies, we've partnered together, and the multi-jurisdictional master plan, which our Parks Board adopted last year, and which you all also approved as part of your plan last year, identified target areas in our community where parks are needed, and particularly on the west side, and identified, the Fairview property and that surrounding area as an area needed for future parks. And then, in addition, in the capital project list on the multi-jurisdictional master plan, a community park is identified in that project list with the city and the Parks District being contributing partners to that plan. So it's been part of our document, part of our plan. We've worked together and we have done the work so far to try to make this project to be something that we can do for our future. So we are requesting that we use those funds that are collected for the Parks District to be used for this project. Do you have any questions?
Do you just want to write us a check? Or?
Megan?
Yeah. Sorry. I guess I just have a couple of questions on the SDCs because I don't fully understand them. But so the money you request, the city versus the county pocket or buckets of money for folks that are developing in the UGB but are not yet in city limits, does it go into the county bucket or the city bucket?
So we collect money for the Parks District, and those two things are divided in for things inside the city, inside the urban growth boundary, and inside the city, inside the urban growth boundary and outside of the urban growth boundary. If it's outside of the city limits, but within the urban growth boundary, then those things would be collected in the county.
Okay.
Is that what you're asking?
I think I just got confused again, but so yeah, trying to think of a good, but yeah, so if I was developing on Belmont outside of city limits, but in the urban growth boundary and I paid SDCs, they would go into the county SDC bucket.
Yes, it would.
To be spent outside. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, thank you, that's helpful.
Oh, I'm
Oh,
sorry.
sorry.
And just, it's my understanding on the board that our priority is to use these SDC funds to the priorities of the community, all of the community. And while we have a contractual obligation per the intergovernmental agreement to request your authorization to utilize city collected SDCs, if they're applied towards projects outside of the urban growth boundary, there's still projects that are going to benefit, our entire community. So it's kind of, where those SDCs are generated is kind of, it doesn't really matter because it still all gets applied to, the development for the betterment of the community.
Okay. So I just sidetracked myself from my own questions. I guess so, and then maybe this is going to lead to two other questions, but the 1.5 million, is that the, what percentage of the purchase cost is that? Or basically how much is being covered by the county SDC bucket?
So far, so we've done planning for this project that we hired Walker Macy as our consultants to do some due diligence to determine whether or not this parcel was feasible. And Walker Macy said, yes, this parcel is feasible. We've used approximately $100,000 of county SDCs towards that planning.
And about 300 of the city?
Yes, I'd have to go back and look at that.
Okay, and then for the purchase itself, how much is going to be county?
So right now we are requesting the full amount to be used to use the inside the urban growth boundary fund. So $1,530,000. It's $765,000 per parcel. And there's two parcels.
Okay.
And the board feels that it's justifiable to use, the city SDC fund. Again, it's the park district's SDC funds because of the proximity. It's adjacent to the city or to the urban growth boundary. In our mind, it'll be a community park for everyone to use, but the accessibility of it is right next to the city. And as Heather pointed out in her comment earlier this evening, there isn't really that much space within the urban growth boundary that any of our entities, whether it be parks or the city or anyone else, can develop a community park. So this is a benefit to the city residents as much as it is to everyone else.
And then just to put it out there, we will be seeking additional grant funding through OPRD, Oregon Parks and Recreation Department, to help cover some of these costs. So additional grant funding that we would be used would allow us not to use as much money from city SDC funds for the purchase of that property.
So I don't disagree with the argument that city SDC funds should be a portion of this because it will certainly benefit city residents. I'm just wondering what the argument is for not using any of the urban growth boundary or county development money.
And we certainly are using county, as Marcy said, for part of this project. But it's also the amount of money that we collect from the county is significantly less than what we have collected historically from. Inside of the urban growth boundary is where a lot of the development has occurred. So we're trying to apportion and budget our SDC funds equitably across all development opportunities within our constituency, within our district. But again, it doesn't seem to me like there's that much opportunity to use city SDC funds within the city because the opportunities for development and procurement or capital improvements within the city are a lot less. So we couldn't get any closer to the city than this particular project and this opportunity.
So again, to what you just said, though, most of the development that has occurred has been within the UGB. And you said that money is going into the county bucket. Again, I'm wondering why we're not using
No. The buckets are definitely kept separated. But when because with the contractual obligations, we're required to, use city-derived SDCs. I guess I'm catching up on myself here. They all need to be used for capital improvement projects within our community. And when we use park SDC funds that are collected from the city. We would prioritize that within city projects, but when those projects haven't been as available or accessible, our money is going to go so much further in this particular project, which is adjacent to the city. And that is why we feel like it is a reasonable request.
And then to put it in perspective, if you're looking for some numbers to help give you a little idea of what we're talking about, and take it, this is an unaudited amount of money. Like currently we have over $1 million of inside the UGB funds that are available. Outside of the UGB, we have just over $250,000. So
banking that.
right. And so, I mean, I think to kind of put it in perspective, like over the course of years, we will want to also do projects within the county that aren't necessarily right beside the urban growth boundary that might stretch all the way within our district, which is all of Hood River County minus Cascade Locks. And so being able to use this money now helps our community in the future, because we'll be able to have those funds to also use for the county that serves all of our residents.
So I'm going to start veering into opinion, so I'm going to leave it for now and let other people ask questions.
Others with a question. I was wondering, Mark's letter references that the contributions to the Rand Road project, and I guess will you clarify what those are?
So it's to my understanding that the city of Hood River has requested that we use up to, I think the agreement was up to 75% of the SDC funds that would be collected for the project to go towards the park improvements and park development that would happen at the Rand Road project, which our board was in favor of.
So I can explain a little bit more about that because I was at that meeting and you were at that meeting, weren't you, Hannah? The one that we had.
It was at Odell Park.
Oh, no, I don't think
You weren't at that one.
No.
I was there.
Okay, so, and you can clarify, you weren't there, Will, but I think you know what we had done at that meeting. So we asked to have the fees either credited or waived somehow for the affordable housing units. If there was any units that were market rate houses that were going to be sold at market rate, then they would have to pay their STCs for parks. But the affordable housing units would be credited.
And that's approximately 100 units.
Right, right. So we kind of back of the napkin, 450,000.
I think it would be 650,000, but
okay,
yes.
600, because I think it's gone up. So
right.
Anyway, 100 units, and then there might be some other units that would be 80 to 120, but they are below market. But we didn't discuss those specifically. But it was just for those units that were the 80 and below, basically. And I think we're really going to have a lot that are going to be 60 and below, but it'd be credited for that. So that was the discussion and the vote that happened at Parks and Rec, that's what they're doing. And then, but we, the city, have to build the park. We don't have to pay the SDCs, but we have to build the park.
And I think that park, we have had discussions subsequent to that meeting, which I was bummed to miss, but that it's about a quarter acre of a park or something, so it's a small park. Community park. And again, I mean, these parks happen because we collaborate, we work together to make them happen, and there are amenities for all of us. But yeah, our board was in support of that, and that's a significant chunk for us. I mean, that's about half of what we have saved right now. But it makes a lot of sense for that particular neighborhood and what you guys are trying to do. Plus, we're very supportive of affordable housing projects, and the city's working towards that. We're grateful that you are.
And then just to put it in perspective, the West Side Community Trail, which would be part meander through the affordable housing, that affordable housing area, would also be able to connect towards, it would be part of that completion link to connect towards this park and this property that we're referencing via trail. And so, again, something that would link our community together.
Additional questions? Mark?
I guess I'll ask a question part and then. SDCs have been such an important part of state grant matching for waterfront park, for the 5 cycles at the skate park, for all these things that you guys do. But how is your board say we should spend the bucket to zero and then still be able to do those grants? I don't understand how you can have both of those things.
So currently, we wouldn't be spending all of that money, that bucket to zero. We would be putting down a sizable chunk of that money and then financing the rest. We have secured a great rate with the bank. And so we would be putting down approximately $750,000, probably $765,000 for at least one parcel right now, and then financing the rest. And that's where the request for future use of SDC funds would come. And so in terms of how that looks for grant funding, I would say that OPRD would look favorably upon that. And they would also look favorably upon partnerships with agencies like yours.
So you guys are really asking, not whether you can spend all the city SDCs on that project right this second, but can you basically carve out the pre-permission of city SDCs to include that? Is that?
Yes. Yes. So right now it would be a sizable chunk, but not using all of those SDCs right now. We don't, our unaudited amount is below our asking amount to you.
I guess I'll put a question mark at the end just so that it's a question mark. The joint master plan includes a lot of other parks inside the city. And are you guys abandoning your commitment to those? The trail network that connects things, or the neighborhood park by the new school, or the neighborhood park in the other places?
Are we abandoning those? Absolutely not.
Right. So
Yeah.
the request was like, yeah, you can't afford that other stuff. Put all your money in this one. It's sort of what I was hearing. And that's a lot different from the master plan, which is, we have a lot of things to do and we need to apply for grants for all of it, blah, blah, blah. Does that make sense?
We are working on I guess I should have prefaced that with today. Today, we have this opportunity in front of us and we would like to secure your authorization to utilize this money towards this park for today. And in the future, yes, we are still committed to, the board is in the Parks District is still committed to, helping develop those other parks that, as we have an opportunity, as much as you guys are committed to helping, the Parks District build, parks within this area as well. It'll be a collaboration as those opportunities come up. We feel that we are trying to secure this particular property to build a park for the community as a future. But as other opportunities arise, yes, we'll be absolutely supportive of those and do everything that we can to build in the city as well, if they are affordable, real projects that we can all work on to accomplish.
Okay. I think what I heard you saying there is, this is the one that's available today. This is the one you're seizing the moment on today. You're not abandoning other ones,
Right.
but you don't have an opportunity for a space in one of those areas right now.
Right. And just as, I remember the city got a lot of questions too about like, well, how are you going to fund those parks in those locations? How are we going to build those parks? And I don't know that any of us can tell the future and any of us had a solid question on that yet, but we've got it earmarked and we know it's an opportunity that we want to pursue eventually.
Tim?
Thank you, Mayor. In the letter here, it mentions in support that was done. Can you describe some of the outreach that was done?
Oh, sure. So we had an online survey, which we received over 550 responses from. We had 5 focus group meetings, including a Latino focus group meeting that was done in Spanish. And we also had a virtual community open house. And then in addition to that, we received numerous emails and letters of support and people wanting to be involved in the project.
Is the property in the National Scenic Area?
Yes, it is.
Have you received approval from that process?
So no, we, as part of this process, we did our due diligence with the planning. We decided to basically fast track this project in order to say we have had an option agreement for this plan, and we decided to fast track it and do our due diligence with the National Scenic Area specifically because those rules are being updated and going to be amended within the county. And so we had our planning team, Walker Macy and Angelo Planning Group, who was in charge of the code essentially, to do all of the research on the latest updates with the National Scenic Area to ensure that we wouldn't have any hiccups along the way. And the basic premise is that a park is allowed in this area. There should be no major barriers other than, like if we wanted to do like some sort of like sports complex or, a ton of lights or those sorts of things. But the good news is, from what we have heard from our community, that is not needed or desired for that particular parcel. What we have heard from our community is that they want places to walk. They do want some fields. They want, a possible dog park. They want, trails and open space and a place to gather with people. And all of those things are allowable within the National Scenic Area. And we would be working closely with, in our planning process for our future when we one day will be, hopefully be able, one day when we develop.
So those uses comport to what's your vision of a community park?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
I said, would those uses that you mentioned would be in line with what you envision for a community park to be?
It's what our community has told us that they envision as part of their park, yeah. Yes, we have not secured a permit yet because we're at the phase, we're at the very, very beginning phases where we're just being able to acquire the property. And we don't want to get a permit at this point because we aren't ready to, we don't have the resources to build yet.
And because of the National Scenic Area rules are changing, and in order, we don't want to do a permit under the old rules when we're going to be subject to the new rules in the future. And so we did our due diligence on the new rules so that we understand what's coming up, what's going to be coming up.
Thank you.
I had a similar question to Tim. Actually, I had a two-legged question. I'm one of them was the National Scenic question. I'm personally a user of that wonderful trail. I'm a runner. It's like the best part of the run is running that particular spot. But I noticed it hasn't been around so much in the last couple of years, but sometimes the northern part gets a little wet. And I just wondered, are there any wetlands issues, regulatory issues because of some kind of wetlands problem on the northern end that might impede development as a park?
We looked into that, if I may.
Sure.
We looked into that before we even explored the option agreement. That is a concern that had plagued this particular project since Thrive brought it up 5 years ago and we started looking into it. There was irrigation drainage issue there, and the current owners, sellers, have addressed that. It will definitely get studied. It appears that there is some some moisture there, but it's probably more related to an irrigation issue, is what our diligence has shown us. So we're waiting to see, but if it is a wetland area, it's going to be incorporated into the park, into the some of the concepts that we've come up with is having a more natural area. So why not highlight it if that's what that is? So by the time we're able to go through the entire planning period, we'll have a better idea of what that is, and then we'll work around it. But yeah, it's a beautiful spot. Mhm.
I have a question. You had mentioned that you had done extensive public outreach. What was the turnout for both your English sessions and your Spanish speaking sections?
So we did do focus groups. So focus groups are smaller setting meetings. And so our consultants recommended approximately 10 or so people per group in order to best hear people. And actually our Latino focus group was our largest focus group with, I don't have the exact number on me, but I would say 10 plus people in that group. And we did do outreach in Spanish and English throughout, and our survey was put in both Spanish and English.
And what was the turnout of that?
I don't have those exact numbers. So I can't say. I know that we did have over 550 participants, but I don't have those numbers.
Yeah, what I'm curious is because I heard our community is stating that they need this. And so I'm trying to figure out and define, who do you define as your community? Because a majority of the times it's the underserved Latinx, houseless population, or Native American population that are left out of these conversations. And then we go with community says, what our monolingual speaking community. A lot of the times emails or surveys on an online form don't work. So I appreciate that you guys have reached out to the next door to try and help you with this, but I'm having a hard time defining, or who you define as community that's telling you they have these
So,
needs.
and you're talking about, that was at our latest outreach efforts, like just within the last year. I know that when I first got engaged in Parks and Rec, with Parks and Rec and this particular project, this was when Thrive had worked together with PSU. And I remember even 5 years ago, it was a priority to make sure that our community, meaning our Latino community, I can't say whether there were a lot of Native Americans that participated or not, but we invited everybody. We were definitely trying to be inclusive. And I specifically remember that not only having, multi-purpose sports fields available, that was a priority for all of our communities, but also the idea of a kiosco, which I thought I had not heard of, and it was unfamiliar to me, but this idea of a central gathering place and a place to have, family potlucks and gatherings and quinceañeras and all of those things. That was mentioned as a priority, and it has been incorporated into our concept plans. And I would love to see that become a part of it. So it is, through Nan Notaboom, she's on our board and has a show on Radio Tierra. Like it is a priority to us that we include our community, as in everyone that lives here and comes and visits here. So we definitely are aware of that and try to make it a priority to include all voices.
And I was, I did attend the Latino outreach focus group meeting, and some of the things that I listed were things that I heard during that meeting. And definitely would love to figure out more ways to be more inclusive and make sure that a diverse community is being heard, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you for asking that. I think it's important.
Okay, I've got one thing, a lot of these questions that the other people have asked, I have on my list. So thank you everyone for asking those. And so you said based on reports from Walker Macy, those were the ones that determined, that looked at the scenic area rules.
So we had
that you feel good. You're not going to say no to what you want.
Our consultants said they see no roadblocks in making this park a reality. They think that it's a suitable and great site for our community.
Okay. One of the sentences in here, I don't quite understand. So that the amount is 1,530,000, and that would be over a period of time. We wouldn't want that all to us to write a check to you tomorrow.
Mhm.
Or you would actually write a check out of your own.
Exactly.
Only with our permission. But you wouldn't need that all at once. But then there's a sentence that says, we anticipate other revenue streams, such as grant funds, to reimburse this fund. So I know there's a lot of funding you can get that is not, you cannot use it to reimburse stuff.
So
So what, I'm not sure what that means. And then it says, in which case we will replenish the inside UGB SDC fund. So inside the UGB does not mean inside the city limits. It would go into the county fund.
So if I could just explain a little bit about OPRD grant funding.
Okay.
It is a reimbursement fund. So when Mark asked the question about, I don't quite understand, would you take out all of those funds to go towards this grant? Isn't that counterintuitive? He was onto something because I think he's familiar with how OPRD grants work. So we would take out a portion of the money, right, to make our down payment. Then with the grant funding, we would say, hey, we have this money set aside to use towards this project, right? And we've paid for this project, and then they would reimburse us for the money that we have spent. And that's how OPRD grants work.
It's often a matching, right?
Right, it's a matching. We have to
really-
show that we have the money on hand to use.
And it's really tricky because we need the grant to purchase the property, but you can't get the grant until you purchase the property. So it's kind of
Okay.
it's kind of challenging.
But it is reimbursable. So you're talking about OPRD specifically, because I know there's a lot of other grants that you cannot, backfill stuff
It
with, but that
is.
one you can.
Yes, and then I guess I want to just also reiterate that we did receive a grant for the multi-jurisdictional master plan, which was under the county's name because they were the better match for that project. We received $40,000 from OPRD to fund the planning portion of the multi-jurisdictional master plan. OPRD looks favorably upon agencies when they then follow up with an acquisition grant, and then they follow up with a development grant. And so we've shown that we've done our work with the multi-jurisdictional master plan by having all of our agencies go forward and approve that planning document. They'll look at, with your support, they will likely look favorably upon this project because we're following up with an acquisition request.
Okay. Just one other thing. I wanted to hit on what Heather Staten had mentioned in her comments earlier, that if this was approved, this was built, it's adjacent to the city limits, the edge of the UGB now, but what eventually will be the edge of the city limits. And there was on your maps, and then also in the language, a star that was, a park area that was basically just east of the years. So there was this property on the map, then this other star. Then there was verbiage that said may or may not replace another park in the area. One caveat for me personally, and I think this is what Heather was mentioning and trying to get across, was this can replace another park that might be a star on that map, so that it could be housing. We wouldn't need to put another park there because we'd have this big, huge community park right there adjacent. So I would absolutely need to have it not say may or may not. Let's say if we have this, we're putting money into it, it's going to be a big community park. This is the park. We are not going to take additional land out. It could be housing.
It's not our of our master plan, Parks master plan reads it all.
But that's what it said on the
Um,
thing that she. the
Isn't
thing
that
she
map
just gave us.
from the West Side Development Plan? Is that a city map?
I mean, it says that
So-
basically this could count as one of the parks within the, one of the larger parks within the community. on the west side. Is what that quote, if you go to your presentation. there's a
Right,
quote.
and
Yeah,
yeah, I don't know how
How to
to
put it
quite
back up
share,
there.
share
Well,
the
I mean, the
screen.
closest star to it is the one directly east of it, so
Mhm.
wouldn't you think it would replace that star?
I mean,
Okay, sorry.
There you go, good, but that's, I mean, it's also.
I think, yeah, you're good. That's fine.
You have all this flexibility with where we put.
Thank you.
put
Slide was it.
I
So,
just think that this is such a big community park. And if we're gonna put money into it, I would really, that would be fine,
so it actually
but I
says-
don't,
This one?
I wanna make sure then that we're not gonna have another park right next to it where it could be housing. And I think you guys alluded to that, Heather alluded to that, but it isn't specified.
I think it's that picture there. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes.
And then,
Community
so
park right at the bottom.
that would be the Hennel property right there, isn't it? Where it's an orchard currently. And
Yes,
it's not available for sale. It
Correct.
likely could possibly be someday, who knows? But there's the West Side Elementary School in red. And then the property we're looking at is just outside of that in a light green. And
Yeah.
I could be wrong, but I think this might come from the city's West Side area concept plan.
And to be fair, the multi-jurisdictional master plan does complement the verbiage in the West Side area concept plan, saying that it could serve as, it could possibly replace one of those neighborhood parks. I think coming, from my perspective, we don't have enough parks. And so, but we also don't have enough money right now to have, all of these parks. And so this one community park would serve residents on the west side of Hood River. I think as we move into the future, what we do with, smaller neighborhood parks still remains to be seen, because we still need to identify where those parcels might be, how much money would need to be allocated towards those things. Those are kind of future unknowns right now. But what we do know that's right in front of us is that we have a 20-acre parcel that is just outside of the urban growth boundary at an incredibly fair price that would serve everyone in our community.
I have one more question.
Megan.
All right, I forgot about this one. And I'm just trying to remember from the Parks Master Planning process. So Community Park is the one that is designed to serve like a 10 to 20 mile radius area, right? And so there will just be like the one for the whole valley, is that correct?
I'm sorry, so
I think that was kind of the definition.
The definition of community park was like serves a 10 to 20 mile radius. And if I'm remembering our plan correctly, it was that basically you need one for the valley, given that radius. Is that's correct? Okay. Thank you.
Other questions? Does anyone have any other questions? Okay.
Mayor, if you done with questions?
Yeah.
I had a suggestion. The only documentation I had for the 70 Grand Road SEC waiver was a recap email from former city manager Richard Fuller, stating that it was a waiver of 75% to 100% of the affordable housing units. I just heard the assistant director say up to 75%. So if that hasn't been documented in any sort of written way, you may want to ask that get documented, contingent upon whatever decision you make tonight, if that's a portion of what is driving your decision tonight.
Yeah, I thought it was 70, at least 75.
That was a meeting that you guys had, not that we
Correct.
Mayor McBride and former city manager Rachel Fuller
Yeah, that we
came
to Parks and Rec, and then, I would assume it's in their meeting minutes too, but.
It is, and I can go back and verify that, and I think that I was using language to be on the safe side, and I think that Will's language probably more realistically reflects the nature of that conversation. I do think that it was in between 75 and 100.
Thank you very much.
That's all you have, Will, on that? Okay, all right, thank you. I don't think we have any more questions. I think we have some discussion. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I still got questions in my head about different things, but let's go around the room and see what people think.
I mean, I feel confused. I just feel confused around, we're being asked to fork over a substantial amount of money. It sounds like the county is unable to come anywhere near to what we're going to be able to offer. And then I worry, if we say yes and give all this money away for this park, which is important, what does that do for some of these other smaller parks that we have in plan, especially around the park at 780 Rand? I just feel confused. Like I don't understand it.
Okay. I think SDCs have to be used for.
No, I get that piece. I get
It has
that
to be
piece.
used for new, we can't like do maintenance.
Right.
We can improve parks by new land for new parks. That's what it's for.
So it's important to remember that these SDCs are the Park District's SDCs.
They're
The
not
city has agreed to collect them for the Park District. And in return for that, the Parks District has agreed to say, all right, since most of the SDCs are saved in the city and there's real needs, that we'll spend them in the city. And then on a case-by-case basis, like Eagle Park by the high school, they came and said, hey, this is predominantly our
Right.
city residents. Can we have that agreement? And here they're saying, can we just consider these 20 acres, which are adjacent on two sides to the city, or the urban growth area, can we just consider that in the city for the purposes of city collected district SDCs? Does that help at all?
Yeah. I understand that
Yeah,
piece.
good explanation. Yeah. So that's what it's about. And my, we have this thing about Rand Road that we have, the Parks District did vote on it at their meeting, and it should be in their meeting minutes. It would be great to memorialize that in something official between the parks and the city, although you have it in your minutes. I'm nervous about using all this money for that park. I mean, I love the idea that the park is outside the city, so we don't have to take that away from building residences. I love that idea. But I just don't want to have later come back to bite us. Well, now you got to put another park right beside it, so to speak. And then, well, we would have taken these SDCs that we spent on that park if we knew we were going to have to put another park right next.
Right. That's the piece
So to
that I'm
speak. So
confused
that
about.
is for me, the problem for me.
I think that the park master plan, which is guidance, it's not a specific, this park has to have a park here, means that we're gonna, like they said, collaboratively decide where a park should go. So when there's a development plan for Hanners, we're gonna be able to say, is that just a greenway, or is it a teeny little park, or is it no park needed at all because we're close to the big park? I think that we're still fully in the driver's seat for future development stuff. But yeah,
Okay, that's your take on that.
well, and I think everything in the master plan is like, here's about what you need, and here's the set of tools to get it. And it doesn't say, there shall be a park at this lawn, and so, you have to do it even if they build another park.
But is the orchard even up for discussion for being for sale? That's what I'm confused
No,
about
it
as
may not
well.
be for 10 or 20 or 30 years.
Or at all, right?
But in the housing plan and everything, we said that is a future neighborhood. From our, has to be for our thinking. And then when there's a future neighborhood there needs to be park amenities, just like there's street amenities and stuff like that. So when that, and that was the whole, the whole West Side thing, and then that got spilled into a bunch of different stuff, including the parks plan. So we have to think, even though it's just trees now, I mean, it's trees now. That someday it won't be, and are we thinking about it right when that someday happens?
Yeah, I think, they're trying to seize the moment that this is for sale. It's a big piece. It's not already developed with something else. And it could be a park. So, it's kind of like us purchasing Rand Road. It was available. It had an old shed on it, a barn. And we seized the moment and we got it. And now we have it for affordable housing. And they were doing the same thing for this piece for parks. It's similar in thinking.
So I'll jump on and say that I support this. I do think that most of the users are going to come from the city. It is right next to the city. I think there's still a lot of money that's going to need to go into it. And if we wanted to say, no city money is going to go towards construction, there's still a lot of money that's going to happen to make this park. Maybe that's bad policy to tie future council's hands that way, but so I do think I was very excited that they bought the piece. I love to hike there myself, so I support the request.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Eric.
I also support the request. I acknowledge, though, that there's a judgment call to be made here, and I think the intergovernmental agreement empowers us, not sort of, it does empower us to have this difficult discussion. And I guess my feeling is that there is this opportunity. This is 20 contiguous acres, in which, I mean, the fact that we've been saying that and having a conversation with the river in the same sentence is illustrative of the rareness of the opportunity. And there is a bit of, I think, this board, being the Parks and Rec board, that has come together and vetted this and come to a conclusion based on their own fiduciary oversight of these funds, because they are their funds. We have this vote, but it's their funds. They believe it's the best bang for the buck to sort of take this opportunity to acquire this parkland. And if you think about Hood River, we don't have a lot of Hood River very broadly. We don't have a lot of larger parks. You think of Cirrhosis Park in the Dalles. I forget the name of it. There's a wonderful 10, 20 acre park in say McMinnville comes to mind. They're just such community gems, and there is just this opportunity here. And the other thing I'll say is, I remember when the West Side Plan was being discussed so much, there was a lot of criticism around the fact that these green blobs were just aspirational and may not ever come to fruition. I remember that because I was one of the people saying that. And yet now the Parks Department is following through on that hope. And so, Mark's point about what about the other green blobs? Are those going to, or maybe we don't want them, or we can't afford them? Those are all valid concerns, and Mark's comment did give me some pause there. But there is an opportunity, at least for that one. So it's an opportunity, and in the long term, 10, 20 years, with annexation and expansion, I would think that this would become something that generations would look back and be thankful that we did. So it's a unique opportunity to secure meaningful parkland. And furthermore, as the city expands westward, I would believe that there's probably going to be more dense development than we have on kind of Old Town Hood River. which is, I think, going to accentuate the need for more for dedicated open space in that area. So it is a little bit of a leap of faith, but I think it's one that I'm comfortable.
Yeah, I guess first, I'm wondering why we're talking about this as like all or nothing and not some sort of mixed thing. I don't see any scenario where we don't pay for 100% of it and they can't figure out a way to get some other funding. So big picture, I'm excited that Parks Board is moving forward with this. I think it's a good location, certainly the largest location. We have a community park in the master plan. It will be an important thing for the community. But I think I want to emphasize that, yes, this is a community park for the entire valley. It will be serving the entire valley. That absolutely includes city residents. And I absolutely think we should be putting some city SDCs to it. But I have a real hard time saying that 100% of the cost of this is going to be covered by development that has occurred in city limits to serve, the increased park need of people living in city limits. And then saying that we're going to cover all of the costs, we're going to subsidize everything for folks in the UGB and in the county, even though they will also be served by this park. Especially because we are, in whatever time frame we're doing this, we are basically wiping out or dedicating this fund for the next 3+ years, meaning we're not going to be achieving any of our other goals to meet the needs of park users in the city during that time frame. And I'd like to see some sort of equitable share where folks that are using the park, whether they are county or city, are sharing the cost to acquire this property. I think that is something we can figure out as a community, and I don't see why we're burdening just city residents with that.
Thank you. That's what I wanted to say.
Jim?
I really kind of would like to back up what you just said. And one of the things is confusing to me, and that I don't know. Honestly, I just come out and say I don't know how long it's going to take to make up $1 million of SDC funds. And you're saying 3 years, so something.
Oh, so I did the math of it's the entire fund now plus at least 3 years to get to 1.5 million.
That's 200,000 a year. And for me, again, it's not that it's a bad idea. It's just kind of, it's trying to understand the potential for lost opportunity to do something closer to the citizens. And it's great that city residents will be able to use it, but there's benefits of having parks situated closer to where people live, such that they don't have to drive to them. It doesn't cost them any money to get there. And then there's also the climate aspect. Right. So those things are confusing, but so if there was a way to do it where we wouldn't completely deplete funds, it seems like a great idea. I'm not exactly sure.
I'll just a little bit of real estate information. So if we collect 200,000 a year, is that what you said about Mark? For the city?
150 is what Mark Hickok told me.
150. Okay.
And it says it on here.
This last year, again, an unaudited amount, we collected over $200,000.
Over 200,000. Okay. So you've got 1.5 million for this. And it's 20 acres. But if you look within the city limits, not outside the UGB in the scenic area where you've got a 10-acre minimum. So if you're going to try and do something in the city limits, if you're going to buy a 50 by 100 lot, or maybe even smaller, you're going to be spending $250,000. So, if you say bang for the buck, I know it's a lot of money, but it's a lot of acreage. And, we could save back 200,000 here, 150,000 there, but what are we going to get? We're going to get a 50 by 100 lot, maybe not even that. So we're not going to get any sizable anything, because that's how much it's going to cost inside the city limits. So, I mean, I get your point with, it's outside. That's one reason it's the price it is versus how much things are costing inside now. And how long is it going to take us to save up enough money to buy something like that when the prices are just going higher and higher every month. So I get your point though about not giving every cent, and proportionately, how much does the county receive? How much does the city receive? The county is going to benefit from it too. Shouldn't there be some proportional equity between the city and the county a little bit more than it is? Just figure those numbers, figure out what are those numbers. Mark?
So I've been thinking, hey, Mark, did you win? Did you crush the other little team?
Just the organization is it.
Oh,
I've been noodling while we were talking about what to do. And on one hand, it's like, okay, just say that 20 acres is within the city for the term with respect to the IGA. So that's one super simple way to consider it. And then, they're responsible for the master plan, just like we are, and they allocate stuff. The other thing, and it's sort of, is, okay, you can consider that in, but maybe you say $1 million can go to that edge and the rest has to stay in somewhere else, which is, just a little bit of a negotiation for where funds can go. And then I was just thinking that a third option would be consider it covered in the city area in the IGA, but also consider everything in the UGA as part of the city. So some of this near-term development moves into the bucket that's along with this 20 acres to be growing the pot that helps our, the master plan within the urban growth area. And to me, that maybe that's an okay compromise that says, it's up to their, the money is up to their board. We have this little cutout that says if it's outside the UGA, they got to ask us. And so now, like Eric said, we have a little bit of leverage to make sure that it's helping us get to the master plan stuff within the city. So if we said that maybe they would agree to everything in the UGA plus that 20 acres is considered, city SDCs, considered their SDCs to be spent on within the UGA and per the master plan. That's sort of what the last 30 seconds or so I've been thinking that might be because so much of the new development is within that area that might work. So that's both my opinion and my suggestion.
I like that suggestion. It's kind of a compromise suggestion, but the UGA, it's in the county, but it is all the areas we're going to be annexing. It is adjacent to the city. I mean, that's the area we're supposed to grow into. I like that compromise.
I like the idea of not giving up all the dollars because, for example, close to where I live, there's this beautiful little park called Man Park that has been outdated for I don't know how long. And it has an old rickety slide and it's got a little merry-go-round, and it's in an area where, some folks definitely have lower socioeconomic status. There's an apartment complex nearby. And I think of all those other little parks right now that could use some sort of sprucing up, especially with the pandemic and being limited to being able to go to some of the other places.
So unfortunately, SDCs can't be used for that sprucing, so that has to come out of our budget unless the percent that increases the capacity of kids to hurt themselves on the merry-go-round could be SDCs, but mostly that's on the city parks budget.
Instead of the SDCs.
So could Mark raise his suggestion into the motion?
I think it would be, I make a motion that the city talks to Parks and Rec and amends the IGA about where funds are allocated such that the funds for the city and the UGA, plus that 20 acres of Blackman Skakel or Fairview Park, what are we calling it? All go into the pool, which they have to use within the UGA for the master plan. That's just pretty efficient, huh? We can.
Did you get that, Will? Do you think that's?
So,
I can do it
my
again.
understanding, so if the house is built outside the city limits, but inside the urban growth boundary, that goes in the city pool of money that must be spent within the urban growth boundary, is what you
Yes.
said condition approval on.
Yes.
So my only hesitation is that I would have to think through the logistics, and that might need to be an IGA with the county. Because the county building official is who issues those permits, and so it would be a change. It's a third party that would need to change their process in order to make that agreement work. Since the county has I mean, maybe it can be, as long as Parks agrees that SDCs collected for the UGA count towards Parks master plans within the UGA, that, I mean, I'd be.
So I feel like we're now getting fairly complicated, but I think it's to get to the same point of we want some money that is collected from the UGA and or the county to also contribute to this park. So I don't know if we need to change the mechanism of that versus can we just say that some portion, like we will pay up to a portion, whatever that amount is, and we discussed that, and then other money comes in.
I think we're in agreement, but I mean, so this park is gonna cost $4 million, right? Or $5 million, or some lots of $1 million. And this acquisition is just the very first step of it. So by saying that it can be within the area that our SDCs can be spent, that's the maximum flexibility for them. But
But the county would have to agree to that, because right now, those monies go into a county bucket of SDCs.
do you have the same rule for the county that you have for the city?
No, the county can be spent anywhere. We could spend county SDCs in city limits if we wanted to. The thing I was getting to is kind of what Will's saying with logistics, is trying to figure out, because we get that money when it's collected for permitting.
And just speaking to the Brian, we're reconciling right now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Speaking to that little thing with the green.
He's doing fine, showing up.
The logistics of the collections of it, because the county, when the county money comes in, they don't, I mean, we get a receipt with an address on it, but then we're going to have to start a database where we're looking up the address, seeing if they're in the UGA or not. And it'll add a big logistical piece on that side of us tracking all of that. Because none of that gets ran through the city. So that's, that would be a little trickier. I'm trying to think of other parts around that.
Yeah, so all I'm saying is it's obligating a third party to change their practice, which we can make an agreement between the two LCs that are here, or you don't have a full board with you, so you can condition something, but I can't speak to that third party entity. Say that we can execute that fully.
I think that maybe we could talk about that as a separate thing at a different date, but for the purposes of tonight, of us being able to, legally move forward with this deal and write a check for, for one of these properties and such, we need to have more than we will work on an IGA in the future. Because we're on a bit of a timeline here, so.
I mean, do we say 800,000 then, and which gives you the first step, and then we work on the IGA? So I think that's a question of timing, maybe, Mark. Do you have your debt service schedule?
Debt service will be, it's sometime in October or so that we'll have to get that, but the first one we were going to be paying out of the actual existing fund right now. We do have money in that fund. That will be by the end of this month, so in the next couple of weeks.
So what is the amount of the first payment for your?
$765,000 or $759, I guess, minus the estimate.
So could we do something where we, approve this first payment that gives Parks and Rec time to, apply for grant money, figure out some county SDC stuff, figure out other money, and then they can come back and say, okay, we managed to find, 30% of the cost or 50% of the cost, and here's what else we need, versus saying yes to everything right now.
And then we can also work on this thing that Mark's proposed possibly too. I mean, it just seems more equitable to do that with the money from the UGB.
And it gives time to track down whatever email was sent between Rachel around up to 75%, 100%. That was for 780 rand.
It makes a nice motion, possibly just, we agree with $800,000 on the city SDCs to go towards the acquisition of Fairview, and then we'll work out longer term deal for.
Can I make, don't want to speak for you, Mark, but don't have to say anything wrong here. It's, you're signing this agreement the moment you're obligating yourself to future payments. That then will probably need to be paid out of your general fund.
It'll be paid out of the SDCs.
But if you don't have access to the SDCs, you're putting your full faith and credit. So putting your full faith and credit down on a signature line today without certainty that we have a path towards approval in the future puts you in a difficult situation.
That'd be correct.
So may I maybe suggest that if there's a certain portion of this purchase price that you wish to have come out of the county funds, you could state, that would be able to be stated tonight. And then if there is any amount of SDC waivers for 780 Grant Road that your approval is conditioned upon as well. Both of those could be basically set in concrete tonight and create certainty that the Parks and Rec district needs in order to sign a loan agreement without a more just we will decide later when they need to sign on to very certain loan payments very soon.
To me, that seems more complicated than saying, okay, it's within the spirit of the master plan to the SDCs within the UGA be spent on, plus this 20 acres be spent on master plan projects. Plus this 20 acres.
So Mark, I have a question for saying that. So are you saying that the previously elected SDCs within the urban growth boundary, they need to go back and calculate what those were to know what's in the bucket now and how much should be spent?
I mean, there's
Is that
only
what you're saying?
there's only $200,000 according to Marcy in the county bucket right now. So I would say that's not worth doing it, but from here forward, that would be, I don't know. I mean, versus saying, okay, except for the piece of rand and except for this and here's a dollar amount, that seems maybe short term quicker, but long term less structural.
I have an idea. I can't make a motion, but I'm just going to throw an idea out there. I think a motion should include the 75%, between 75 and 100% of waiver of the affordable housing SDCs for Rand Road, which we already agreed to.
Right.
Anyway, but we haven't formalized it. So that would be part of an agreement. The county needs to contribute all of the county SDCs should go towards this project, whatever you have in your bucket. And then the difference between that amount and what you need is what we would give. If you have 200 and you need 1560, then we would give 1360. Then you'd be guaranteed you'd have all the money you needed. Yes, it would take all your money down to zero for the county. And then we can work on this thing that Mark's talking about at some point. But it would make us feel the county's paying something. And I know they have already paid something because you've done due diligence with some of their money. But there's just an idea.
So I guess part of this to me is that, it's financing. So we're looking forward, not necessarily at the buckets right now. And I had emailed Mark earlier to just ask. And so they're getting, correct me if I got the numbers wrong, but about 100,000 into the county bucket every year and about 150,000 in the city bucket every year. So I don't know if it has to be the draw down both your buckets to zero right now, but also what's an equitable distribution over the next, I don't know how long this thing is going to last, 5 years, 10 years. Probably not 10. I don't know, maybe. But figuring, I think it's an easy, what's a percentage of residents in the city versus residents in the county, or proportion of, how much money you're getting every year from each one, or something in the bucket, some sort of calculation of likely users between city and county. I think there's an easy way to come up with something that's probably in the 50 to 70% is covered by city STCs. If I'm going to make up a number, the rest is county, but we can just come up with that.
That's where I feel like this project, like we talked about, is already going to take so much more money than what we're contributing. So I'm not worried about this at all. It's going to take $5 million to build up this park. If we're contributing 1.5, that's even way less than what our city residents are going to be getting.
I think that's really assuming we're not going to get asked for more money in the future.
Well, we won't have any.
Well, we will by then.
And I think the county is going to have the perspective, this thing is so close to the city line and river that we're sort of taking too much. It's right along UGB, and it's going to be the future of the river going that direction. So I just feel like it's not out far enough in the county for the county to justify a giant swallow.
But the Parks Master Plan, this is the community park for the entire valley.
In the Parks Master Plan also, it does state that this particular park was going to be worked on by the city and the Parks District, but the county was not included in the capital planning part of that. There were other park projects that the county was included in and out further in the county, but for this specific parcel, it was just city.
Right, and I think this is getting the confusion of county government. I don't see doing much with this park, but county SC, the bucket of county SDCs, which includes folks in the urban growth boundary but outside city limits, I think should justifiably be contributing something to this.
Something.
Yeah.
Something.
Mark and Will, the request is for 1.5 building lot. What is the actual need to get this to the next month? What do you need from us in the next month, over which time we can work out this long-term thing?
Well, I am going to be sending an agreement, like Will mentioned, on a loan agreement for part of this, and then I also need about half of it, 760,000, to be able to purchase coming up here. I think out of everything that I've heard right here, I'm thinking that Mayor McBride's suggestion with the one caveat, instead of saying that we're going to spend the $200,000 all the way down at this first point, we just say that $200,000 is the county part right there. I don't want to spend one account completely down to zero right now, but we can borrow against that in the future. If we do that, then if we have a project on a trail or Post Canyon or somewhere else that we need the money and we need to move forward with, I don't want to be able to not be able to move on something like that in the county. And so if we had something along those lines of, we use whatever the balance is in the county fund, that's how much that we can use in the on the county side, and the city makes up for the other side. I think that would get us where we want to, and then we can make a commitment to working with both the county, our board, and the city council to work toward a new collection agreement that speaks a little bit more toward the goals that Councilman Van Miller is bringing out with trying to make sure that all of the SDCs that are collected in the UGB, whether or not they're collected at the county's desk or at the city's desk, or in this other fund right here. I think that would work for us.
But you do need the 750, whatever that number was, for the down payment.
Yeah, and then we need to be able to have some sort of borrowing capacity against the other side too.
And the only way you can borrow the capacity is to know that you're gonna have the balance coming in. That's the only way you can borrow against it. In order to purchase the property, you have to have that in place.
Yes.
So that says the 1.3.
Yeah.
So your argument of not spending the county, because you would potentially be missing opportunities, or isn't that the same thing that we're facing if we spend it all?
We're not spending all of the city money down right now. It would be, so it's about half, really. Well, more than half of the city, half of the entire fund is what we would be spending right now, because it would be about half down on the properties.
So if we came across a piece of property, trail extension costs $300,000, we could do that.
Yes, the money would still be in the account in order to do that, and it would be the board, our board of directors, but they would be able to do that. The other thing is we got very good terms borrowing against us right now, and I think that we need to be thinking about that. As we finish this master plan, the marching orders right when we finished it was, okay, we've got a list, let's start looking around and see what we can do. And our terms, like I say, are very good with the banks right now to be able to borrow against future capacity. So if we found a piece of property that was more than that, but it was just a prime spot that we needed to jump on that was more in the balance, I'm sure that we could continue to borrow against the capacity of this. This is very big.
The loan agreement things.
What's that?
That wouldn't mess up the loan agreement, because what I'm hearing you say is that, you know, we would give you $765,000, and then you would have to show that you have the capacity to pay out the loan some other way. Like take half of the remaining funds, buy a piece of property with it. That's not going to mess up that relationship.
No.
Can I say you're borrowing on a full faith and credit basis? Is that correct?
Yes, based on our tax rate and our future revenue on the SDCs.
So I can totally understand his need to know that the funds are authorized, because and then have that flexibility over time to see how SDCs are coming in, what they feel comfortable with. As far as what Mark's trying to weigh here is how much risk he wants to put his operating funds at. Because if the SDCs aren't authorized and aren't available, they have a very small tax rate that then has to come into play.
And so then what I heard Marcy say is that you guys are going to seek some other type of funding.
Yeah.
That could potentially be used to reimburse the SDC loan.
Absolutely, and that would go directly into the fund that is taken out of inside the UGB and right there, and we think that we've got a very good chance at that. And that's why when we negotiated this loan, we also negotiated the ability to do prepayments. And so we are hoping that we get those grant funds and we can move forward and just pay that back.
If that helps in context, this is exactly how we bought 70 Grand Road. We are happening to pay it back with construction excise tax monies. But the general fund is on the hook should there have not been construction excise tax funds. We just felt confident enough that we could cover the debt service with that funds.
So from my end, I'm generally fine with Kate's proposal. I don't think 200,000 is enough. I would like to see like one third, $500,000 coming from outside the city and the rest city. And then, the payback can be in that same proportion back to both funds. This is not my perspective.
And I think in the long term of the big picture of the whole park, getting built out, it's going to be millions of dollars. I think that, the next grab should probably be from the county funds. But I get Jessica's point about, it's going to cost so much more, and then maybe the next time you take the money out of the county money and you don't come and, it's not us. We do this now,
So-
the county does X later.
Well, I mean, this is where we have control. I'd rather make some equitable thing now because fundamentally, I feel like this is what, the second or third time that we've had, there's no money in the county bucket, we need your money. And it just keeps happening. So why am I gonna rely on, I'm sorry, because you guys are great partners, but why would I assume that we're not gonna get asked for money in the future? If there's no money in the county bucket?
Yeah, because there's a lot more building in the city, so that's why you have a lot more cities.
Yeah, the numbers I gave you earlier, Councilman Saunders, were projections. I went back and looked at the last year's numbers, our year end. And last year we brought in $120,000 in the county and $240,000 in the city. So it's double the amount of development is happening in city limits that's happening in the rest of the county. So I mean,
Right, but I guess to that point, that means double the amount of parking is in the city versus the county. I mean, if we're talking about what SDCs are for. And so I want to make sure we are making sure that we're protecting city residents' needs and taking care of them, which does mean we can't put all of our eggs in what is an incredibly good basket, but we need to have other things in various forms of moving forward. And I guess to that point, that's still about 1/3 to 2/3. So that's where I'm comfortable.
So do we need to have all that figured out now, or do we say, here's less than 1.5, given this other bucket, that gets them going, and then we work on the EGA stuff over the next 3 months. So that the EGA.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can work on the UGA stuff later.
Yeah.
I mean, I think for tonight, Mark's asking us, what are we gonna do about this? Because this is what he needs to know within the next 2 weeks to sign that contract. And if he doesn't have guarantees of money, he can't sign it.
So it's gonna be bad, but I could try a motion.
It's not gonna be less
Okay. Shoot. So I would move that, oh gosh, who's the actual motion? Oh, no, I have to make it up. I would move that we approve inside city SDCs be used to pay for 2/3 of the total cost of the purchase price, with the other 1/3 coming from outside the city SDCs. If other funding, grant or otherwise comes through, I'd like both funds to be replenished in that same 2/3 to 1/3 proportion. And I'd also, in the same motion, want to make sure we've memorialized that 75 to 100% of SDCs will be not charged for the Rand Road affordable housing. What was the word for that? Credited for the affordable housing developed at the 780 Rand Road property.
yeah, I don't know if I can speak for my board on that second part. That's something that they would need to talk about at their board meeting. I mean, they already made the.
They made a motion.
They made a motion and they made that letter to put, or that thing to put in the letter. So I imagine that they will go there, but I two things. I would prefer if that number was a little bit higher than 1/3, 2/3. 3/4, 1/4 would be better for us. And then the other is that other one was already a commitment that our board made, and I don't know how much more solid you need to have it, but that could tie things up a little bit if that's part of this motion. For us to promise something without the rest of my board agreeing to it right now at this moment. But I think that.
It might be that all you need to do is show us your minutes that you approve that. Because I mean, you did have a vote.
Yeah.
So.
You were there.
Yeah, I was there. So-
Yeah.
But, we don't have.
Yeah,
it
absolutely.
right here.
Yeah, we can do that.
So is this something that we can table in the meantime? I mean, is it?
No, because they need to know, because their option is up, and they're gonna lose the property if they don't do the thing within the limit of the option time. Then they lose opportunity to purchase the property potentially.
So Mark, 3/4 is I think about 1,150,000. Is that, would that get you where you need to be?
Yes.
It would not with 2/3, which is roughly just.
I would need to go back and crunch that. I mean, it all depends on how much we're bringing in on the county side, and whether or not that can bring all that, and that really does make it to where the county side is not going to be growing very much, and we won't be able to do nearly as many projects out in the county. And like I think Councilman Haney said, this with just the location of this someone in Parkdale isn't going to look at this project as being something that's really serving everybody out there in the county. This is really serving, a Hood River area. So I'm trying to protect the county funds at some point to be able to still have the flexibility to be able to spend if I get a good project out in further out in the county. And, I'm afraid of putting too many county funds straight towards something that's going to be really serving the city and the people right here in the west side.
Okay, we have a motion.
We don't have a second.
No, we don't have a second. We have a motion and it's 1/3, 2/3, and then, something to memorialize the agreement on Rand Road was included in that motion. Is that correct?
Yeah, and if other outside grant or other funding comes through, reimbursing in that same proportion.
Would they be open to changing it to 25/75 just until, because I think there's general consensus of changing something a little bit longer term, like the IGA, within the UGB being spent within the UGB. So,
Well,
but that's related.
okay, Megan had the motions, everyone see? You see what the motion is, you understand what the motion is, if she has, okay. Do I have a second? So that motion did not get a second. So
Can we try it the other way, just in case? I would move that we approve the original proposal to have it, the city council pursuant to the intergovernmental agreement approve the funding request to draw down exclusively from the city fund as proposed.
the full amount that they asked for, is that what you're saying?
I was saying that.
And does that, were you gonna put anything about the Ram Road or no?
I wasn't, only because I accept the representation that the board's approved it, and I would think that if the board's approved it. But
All right, that's fine. So Eric's made a motion to approve the full amount that the Parks and Rec has asked for this evening. And Jessica seconded that motion. Additional discussion.
Like, I'm gonna just say I want my reason memorialized in the minutes of, well, I think this is a good project. I'm not comfortable with 100% being covered by inside the city STCs.
Yeah, I could do something with it. We decided yes or not. That's what I think we're gonna get. Listen.
Okay. I don't have any more discussion. Let's vote on that. And since we may have different things, I'm just gonna do roll call vote. Eric?
Aye.
Tim? So you were no, all right. Gladys?
No.
Megan?
No,
Jessica?
Yes.
Oh,
I'm gonna vote no. All right, that one does not pass.
what was the second part? I'll try one, which is, and it's 1.2. Is that the 75% is it's 1,147,000. So like it make it even numbers, I should say 1,150,000. Yeah. So I'll make a motion that we approve inside the city SDCs be usable for Fairview Park to a level of $1,150,000, and with the note that any grants and things could possibly offset that to allow use elsewhere in the UGA.
Okay, Mark's made a motion and the amount is $1,150,000. The grant reimbursement. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Tim has seconded that. Additional discussion on that motion?
I think we should we want to put something on the remainder.
Thought we had it if we look.
But it's all based on assumption. It's all based on assumption. I haven't seen it.
Well, I mean, the mayor was there. and
I was there. They made a
supposedly
motion.
it wasn't
It was-
And then Megan had an option that said that the reimbursement funds would be allocated to reimburse the STCs proportionate to this. So that would be quarter.
Just, the motion only has to do with the fact that the city, so we didn't make that. We just said the reimbursement.
So the math was at 3/4, and I tried to include the phrase reimbursement.
So I heard your motion is 100% of the outside funding reimburses the city's fund, which I'm down for. So I don't know if you want to amend that to be clear.
Well, all of these funds are coming from the city. Side.
Or maybe we can just trust the market.
How would I modify the agreement? Given that we didn't say 75, 25, we just said 75.
Yeah, I don't think you need to.
Yeah.
I don't think you need to. Okay, Mark's got the motion. And you did second it, and you're okay with it? Okay, okay. Anything else? All right. Eric?
Aye.
Tim? Buzz?
Aye.
Megan?
Yes.
Jessica?
Aye.
Mark?
Yeah.
And chair votes aye.
Okay.
Let's do a 5-minute recess.
No, I'm gonna take it. Mark Janik is on vacation.
All right. All right, we're back in session. And our next item is Children's Park Pavilion.
Yes, Mayor, and the city council. So we're going from authorizing $1 million in SDCs to $1,000. So this is the Rotary's building a pavilion on city property on Children's Park. And it has requested a waiver of building fees for that. And I believe that we also waived the building here in Jackson Park. So this is just for the council to those fees, and then you will have a free pavilion on that.
It's like a picnic pavilion, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Somehow I thought it was going to be in the southwest corner, but it's actually going to be kind of close to the basketball court.
On the right-hand side, right? That's what Stacy came to tell us last time.
Closer to the basketball
Yeah, it's
court.
right next to the map has it next to the basketball court.
They had presented southwest corner when Stacy came.
Okay.
But I think my recollection of folks I had heard was that basically, as long as it's not in the main green space north of the basketball, I can't use words anymore, basketball court, that they don't particularly, that was the main focus, is they want that field still to be open. So this, I don't know why they would have moved it, but that seems like a fair place for it.
Yeah, I think it was still, they wanted it up kind of on the higher area of the park so that if parents were there having a picnic, they could kind of see what kids were doing down below. I think that was kind of the idea. Keep an eye on what was happening. Does anyone just want to make a motion on this?
I will move that we waive all municipal fees associated with the proposed structure to be located within Children's Park and constructed by the Rotary Club of Hood River.
I will second.
Right, Jessica has made a motion and Megan has made a second to waive the fees for the new pavilion at Children's Park for the Rotary Club. All those in favor?
Aye.
So much easier.
Chair votes aye. Any abstentions? Any nays? No, okay, passed unanimously. Van Road request for proposals. Kevin.
Kevin Liberty, project manager for the project. We'll speak to you about next step and setting a growth or what.
Thank you, Mayor and councilors. When I last discussed the project with you initial,
Joined by Brian Banneman of Leland Consulting Group and Darcy Vincent of DDV Consulting, we discussed 4 preliminary development options for the site. We explained those development options were conceptual, that we would seek additional public and stakeholder input. We would make refinements, and then we would begin the process of soliciting development teams who can improve upon that work. We also reconfirmed the council's goals for the project. The goals and the preliminary development options were folded into a request for qualifications, an RFQ, that affordable housing developers received. That was published in mid-July. The RFQ explained a 2-step process was set up for the development team solicitation, and that the RFQ would be followed by a request for proposals. This was done to encourage the greatest number of submittals from the most qualified teams. It's much easier to share qualifications than to put together a development proposal with this complexity. The RFQ also explained the city intends to select 2 or 3 development teams to respond to the request for proposals. And that's our next step. Narrowing a broader field of development teams to a short list is expected to encourage high-quality proposals because there's a better chance that proposer has an opportunity to be selected as the preferred developer. 7 development teams responded with statements of qualifications in late August. Nearly all are highly qualified. Copies of each submittal is in your packet tonight, beginning on page 138. The submittals were reviewed by a selection team made up of Will Norris, Mark Janik, County Administrator Jeff Hexel, me, and the city's consultants, Brian Vanneman and Darcy Vincent. We evaluated the submittals using criteria that were outlined in the RFQ. These included project vision, including compatibility with city goals, experience of the team and key staff, and experience completing comparable projects. 2 development teams were clearly at the top. 3 other teams scored closely. The selection team concluded that additional process, including development team interviews, would be necessary before identifying a 3rd development team to provide a proposal. As explained in the cover sheet of tonight's packet, due to the urgency of the community's affordable housing need, external deadlines for affordable housing funding sources, and consensus over qualifications, the selection team agreed it was advisable to move forward with 2 firms receiving a request for proposals. I'm really excited to recommend that Bridge Housing Corporation, as well as community development partners, receive a request for proposals. Both of these developers are partnering with the Mid-Columbia Housing Authority's development arm, the Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation, who will provide a shared equity home ownership program, as we heard a little bit about earlier this evening. Tonight, staff asked the council for confirmation that we should move forward with these 2 development teams. Following evaluation of those proposals, staff intends to return to the council with a recommendation for a preferred development team, and that would occur in October, early November. There is a suggested motion on the cover sheet to invite Bridge Housing Corp and CDP to receive a request for proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin. You want to just wait just in case somebody has a question on anything? Those are some amazing proposals
Outstanding.
and so many.
Yeah.
Really, please.
That's great. We weren't sure we were what we were gonna get.
Yeah, yeah. Questions for Kevin? Anyone?
Sorry. I guess just for my own clarity on the next steps. So request for proposals will be sent to a few folks. Will we review those proposals? Do we ever negotiate, or is it really that proposal is approved?
Well,
How does that work?
We expect to continue working with our consultants at Leland Consulting Group to evaluate the proposals that come in, and we intend to bring back a recommendation to you. I don't know that there are any negotiations at that point. We want to make sure that we have council's authorization to move forward with a preferred team, and then we would enter into negotiations.
Okay.
Well, then I have a question. Sorry, are you done?
Yeah, I'm processing, so go for it.
You're done, Megan? Okay, go ahead, Gladys.
I support the suggestion on page 137. I guess the only, if maybe we don't have time to insert this in October, I reviewed both of the proposals for Bridge and CDP. And I guess the only addition that I would like to request is that there be, I didn't see anything specific around a community collaboration art project like some of the other proposals had. And so that's really the only piece that I would like added in here now, is that there is some sort of, whether that's with the schools or a community art project at some point, but that there is community collaboration in regards to the art that's surrounding the area.
Okay. One thing that you will note, if you took a look at the draft RFP, it's at the very end of the packet. It does have a series of questions that we would like the proposers to respond to, including how they would move forward with additional community engagement, outreach, and I can work with the consulting team to add some additional language about community collaboration, and specifically with respect to art, if that is the council's interest. Absolutely.
Questions for anyone?
Kevin, was this for the our 7 acres only, or did it include the county 2 acres?
The RFQ was really focused on the city site, but of the 4 development options, alternative 4 addressed the county's parcel as well. And from the staff perspective, we were really interested in seeing if it would be possible to tie those together. It increases some complexity, and so you'll see in those two proposals, one of the teams really, I think, focused mostly on the city site. Another suggested that they would work as a master developer for a much broader area. So, but that's still part of the mix.
Then, you know, I love those proposals and some of the other stuff. I'd love to see a local land trust get a little bit of support within this project, and I don't quite know how to do that. You know, the one person in the audience, Doug, you know, suggested we just include the third thing, but to me, there might be a better way, which is just to carve out to a local land trust for, you know, a small amount of it, or so how can we both get the best of these things and support a local land trust that's, you know, and you know, I have nothing to gain by big river, but I like the idea of a local thing building up, so.
So
They're doing one.
they're.
Columbia Cascade.
Columbia Housing Authority is talking about that.
Yeah,
And that's what's being included in the bridge and the sea.
But it doesn't give the date, like hasn't been fully established, right?
Right, that's my understanding. Columbia Cascade Housing Corporation is in the process of making the necessary, taking the necessary steps to establish a shared equity home ownership program akin to community land trust.
I was gonna, so I think to what you are asking, so we're gonna get the proposals. They're gonna select one. And then what comes out of that is not gonna be the finished product.
Yep.
And that's, I was gonna highlight that, so there's still gonna be tweaking. Does that get to what you were asking at? Yeah, it's not gonna be like, oh, this is what's gonna be developed.
I think that as I understand things, ultimately after selecting a preferred development team, we would see their suggestions for how they would approach development of the site. But things will evolve over time. The negotiation that needs to occur will kind of set a framework, and over time things will become more clear. But you know, we discussed this at the front end of this project, that we wouldn't know precisely what we would see, but each step along the way things become a bit clearer.
Because like in between now and October, when we'll have the proposals, they're not gonna be doing their community outreach.
Right.
Right.
Because they won't know which one is gonna be the one.
That's correct.
Sure.
So every once in a while, I feel like I'm asking a dumb question, this may be one of those times. But if you happen to know, if someone happens to know, I just happen to notice that Joel Mattson is listed as the executive director, and not one, not two, but three of the proposals. And you know, he's got a track record here of having successful projects. This isn't negative at all. I was just curious if there's some industry thing, but it just struck me as odd that he was listed as an executive director in three of the 7 or 8 proposals. Does anybody know? Is it just an industry thing to borrow upon?
So because he's the director of the Columbia Housing Authority and Columbia Cascade.
Columbia Cascade Housing Corp is a partner in 3 of the proposals.
Okay, so
And Big River's a partner on a couple of the other ones, so they're just like, it's a group of companies coming together to develop what will be a complicated proposal.
okay, it's just the way I was reading it, it sounded more directly part of the executive staff. You're saying he's external all 3.
It's in a partnership.
I told you I might be doing these dumb questions. I just wanted to know. Thank you.
So I'm kind of a little bit jump back to where Mark was with the land trust end of. So there's the 2 recommended proposals have Columbia Cascade Housing Corp for both the less than 60% rental property, which is obviously something they're very familiar and have done a lot of work with Super Trusted Partner in, and then this new land trust for the like 80 to 100%. And I'm just wondering if there was any conversation from the review team about like any concerns that isn't fully formed yet, or like what that might look like, or thoughts.
From the review team, not concerned about fully formed. Big River doesn't have experience to share with us about projects that they have built yet. What we
Or sorry, I'm talking about Columbia Cascade.
understood.
Oh, okay.
So
I might
I
just
think they're
confuse
both
myself.
they're both getting up to speed. Is my point.
Okay.
And that was not identified as a concern.
Okay,
I
thank you.
think if we look to the goals that the council established, primary goal, affordable rental housing, secondary goal, home ownership opportunity, if feasible, for 80 to 120% AMI. And so we definitely discussed 80 to 100 versus 80 to 120. But again, not wanting to delay the project and do some additional interviews and some additional process with that next group of teams to really distinguish one. Thought it made sense to go with the two that clearly were at the top.
Okay, thank you.
And it does state in the proposal in here that they do target homeowners below 80%, but they can go as high up to 100% AMI.
Okay.
So from the review team's perspective, that was consistent with the council's secondary goal. 80 to 100 was pretty close.
I just want to say thank you for bringing this. I was honestly by page 2, I had a smile from ear to ear. I'm really excited for this project to move forward. So thank
And
you.
I'm excited for all the work that the council has done in the community. We're very fortunate to get these
Absolutely.
submittals.
I'm sorry, I was looking at page here. When we were doing the RFP, we talked about a carve out for some full market rate to help fund the project. And I have to confess that I didn't read all the way down through to see how much there is in this. And
At this stage, we don't know that there would be market rate included, but as part of the negotiation, again, part of a proposal first, do you think, from these teams, do you think it's necessary to include that component? Is that helpful? Do you want to do that? So we would look to the proposals first to see if they want to include it.
So it's a possibility, but not
Still-
necessarily 100%.
Correct. And the home market rate was not identified in the council's goals. It was strictly, as Councilor Zamno pointed out, to help speed delivery of affordable units.
Right.
Okay.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I move to direct staff to invite Bridge and CDP to respond to a request for proposals for development of affordable housing at 780 Rand Road.
Second.
Gladys has made a motion and Jessica has seconded the motion to direct staff to invite Bridge and CDP to respond to a request for proposals for development of affordable housing at Rand Road. Additional discussion. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Those voting no? Those abstaining? Chair votes yes. Oh, lost my cover. Oh, this is not good. There it is, there it is.
It's terrible.
Oh, it's mayor call. All right. Not too much. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll start with the big news and the good news. We've done a long search for a new city manager, and we had a second interview of an individual this evening in executive session, and we are reaching out to negotiate a contract for Abigail Elder as our new city manager. So we're excited, very excited. The other things I signed a letter of interest to Pacific Northwest National Laboratory. And it's just a request. Oh, it wasn't in here, was it? No. I'm trying to remember what it was about now. What's that?
I said one too.
Oh, I know, and I'm totally.
Electric vehicle.
Electric vehicle charging. So what it is to study how much capacity our city has to put in electric charging stations. So they evaluate the likelihood of how many we might need and where they would go. And then the back end of what would be needed electric wise from the utility in order to do that. And it's a Department of Energy funded, so there's no funding. And it was just an inquiry letter to find out if, they would use our community as a study. So, no money, no time for us. So we thought it would be a great thing. And it was just a letter of interest that I signed to that. And then I think there's going to be another potential letter. And the county's developing the letter right now, and it's regarding questions about the new green tariffs that are now allowed by the state. And Pacific Power and Light is the company that we use here. And so the letter would be going to them to ask them how it works, basically. What are the logistics of if we were going to have green tariffs here so that we could use energy within our city that was greener. How does it work? It's a brand new program, and the county's developing a letter, and I think maybe we'll, see about piling on to the same letter that they're going to do. So it's just a request of how it will work. No commitment. Bi-state working group for bridge replacement met today and continuing to move forward. I think that the form of how it's all working might change a little bit, but I'll have more on that probably next month on how that might work. But the legislation that we're going to ask Washington, and it's probably going to be pretty much a no-brainer for the Oregon legislature, but if there's some changes needed on the Washington side in order to form a bi-state working group, are being worked on right now, or going through some committee work to, work out all the language. But hopefully next year that'll be voted on in Washington so that we can actually form an official bi-state working group to oversee the building and the running of the new bridge. So that's where we are. And I asked Kevin Greenwood today if he could call Will and get on our schedule at some point in the next month or 6 weeks to just give you guys a little bit of an update, a little bit more thorough than what I've been able to give you. I think that's all I've got. Let's see, Eric?
Nothing for me, Mayor.
Tim?
The only thing, it's been brought to my attention that the Gorge Commission is forming a group to look at climate resiliency strategies. And with the council's permission, we'd like to engage with those folks to find out a little bit and see what that's about.
And was it specific to forest practices, or was there other things?
There's a meeting, this upcoming meeting focuses on forest practices, but I think that they'll
Well, I think that's great, Tim.
I would like to be very much.
Great. Mark?
Do not have anything.
I will share some good news from work. When they created the scenic area, they designated 10 million for economic development, and we only got about 8 million. And partners have been working for decades to get the remaining 2 million, and with especially Senator Merkley's help, they found a pathway to get the money here, and Mid-Columbia Economic Development District submitted a grant application for it, and we got the whole 2 million came to the region. McHead didn't get the whole 2 million. We got 1.9 and 100,000. Yeah, 99,000 went to the Port of Veritas, so good for them. But anyway, we're going to be beefing up our business loan programs. So we have a lot of money we'll need to get out the door over the next couple of years in the scenic
I'll just announce the first Affordable Housing Task Force Committee meeting is Wednesday night at 5:30. Very excited.
And I have two items that I want to talk about. The first one being vaccines. Vaccines and wearing masks in crowds, especially while gathering, remain our most effective tool against all variants, especially with the Delta variant out right now. Whether you have or haven't been vaccinated, please continue to take steps to stay safe and to slow the spread of the virus. Variants are normal, and all viruses mutate and change in order to create a stronger, more harmful versions of themselves. This is called a variant. According to OHA, over 90% of those cases of COVID here in the US have been caused by the variant. Unvaccinated communities are especially at risk, and wearing a mask when you're around people in crowds and gatherings can help protect you and others from spreading the virus. Vaccines are safe, effective, and Pfizer has now been approved. Vaccines are still the best protection we have from getting very sick or going to the hospital. Oregon Health Authority will be offering testing for individuals every Tuesday in September from 10 to 2. Columbia Gorge Family Medicine also provides urgent hours from 5 to 7 p.m. where you could get tested there. And of course, there's One Community Health, where if you are a patient or if you don't have established care, you can receive both testing and vaccines. So that was the first item. And the other item that I wanted for us to bring up and have a discussion around is the idea of reimbursements and stipends to address barriers such as transportation, lost wages, daycare, or any other out-of-pocket costs to ensure that our constituents have the ability to equitably access our task force or planning commission or any other opportunity for community input, that we offer that resource to folks of reimbursements and stipends in order for them to have a seat at the table in order to represent their communities.
Do you want to input?
Yeah, I just want to hear your guys' thoughts on that. I think if we're all in agreement, then maybe we could suggest to Will and staff to figure out how we could make this happen, especially with, the housing task force taking place. And again, that this will only offer more opportunities for other constituents to, again, have access, because as we know, most folks are unable to attend our meetings simply because they are at that second or third job. Folks do not have the ability to leave work in the middle of the day in order to attend this meeting, and it causes them a barrier, which then allows them to not have a seat at the table to simply represent some of the barriers that they may be facing.
How is our current, I thought we had a policy. I thought it was 17.
It's just for childcare.
It's just for childcare.
So it's not far.
So if someone who doesn't have children wants to participate but is unable to participate because they're going to lose wage, then that's a reason for them not to show up to any potentially a meeting or to participate or want to participate in any sort of task force or any community group that we have to help advise us or the projects that we work on.
Go ahead, Megan.
And so from my end, I feel like we acknowledge that there's some barriers with the childcare stipend. We started to work on it with the childcare stipend. I think it's very reasonable I think we already knew that with the childcare stipend, that there's other barriers beyond that. I'm very open to figuring out a pathway about, discussing what is available to us to figure out other options. Within the time frame that fits with everything else Steph has going on. I understand it might not happen tomorrow, but I think that's well within what we have been working on, well within what we should be working on if we're going to talk about equity and engagement.
Yeah, I think, if we're going to talk about equity, that we should have a discussion about it. I think it might be, if we're going to have a full discussion at a regular meeting, not just a council call, that it might be good to find out what other communities are doing, what they're doing it for, what specific, is it every committee, is it every whatever, how many committees we have, and if everyone needed a stipend, how much would it be? I just think some of those, a little bit more research.
Oh, absolutely. And I
numbers
don't know
would
what
be,
those
you know, maybe
numbers are.
just get something, I'm not talking about the next meeting, but I'm just saying we should put it on a list of things that maybe we should be talking about for equity as we can work it into the schedule.
Yeah, my only input from a staff workload and bandwidth perspective is if the council wanted to just basically modify resolution 2019-03 to say that they will reimburse for any eligible cost incurred in service of participation on the volunteer board committee or otherwise for the city. We need to have that by next meeting, and that would at least make an incremental step towards what you're wanting to do. And then, yeah, it's probably a more of a council work plan or a longer term, but we want to talk about stipends, lost wages, because that's much more complicated than do research as to what other entities are doing. But if you want to take just a small step and say direct costs, gas, bus pass, something else where you could give us a receipt and show that it was directly associated with your volunteer. I know the fiscal impact is going to be minimal to no impact, and that would be very easy to write up the resolution and have it to you at the next meeting.
Yeah, I mean, that seems, I was hoping for something a little bit bigger, but it's a step. It's definitely a step.
Well, but I think to his point of we can talk about the next step.
Yeah.
That we
Yeah,
at least have
when we
some
have more
sort
time,
of
staff has more
assistance for
time.
folks who are
Yeah.
stating, I can't leave an hour early from work. Well, we can figure out how we could potentially cover some, not maybe the full wage, but some wage for them to be able to participate in these meetings as we continue to move forward.
Well, maybe let's look at just altering maybe that.
Yeah, it's a really draft something for the city council's review.
Are you good for looking at alterations?
Yeah, so it's direct costs and then adding to recognizing that staff already has a full work plan, that research to talk about a stipend is at some point in the future.
I'm understanding that stipend and lost wages would be the larger conversation that we would schedule. That's my understanding.
So this is just reimbursing direct costs.
That's what easily put together.
Second step.
Second step.
Childcare was the first step. And this is-
Yes.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Anything?
That is all.
We're adjourned, 9:02.
Woo!